Elon Musk, by Walter Isaacson. Introduction. Imagine this for a moment. It's 2008. The entire global economy is collapsing, and you are running two companies that are burning through cash like a wildfire. One company is trying to build electric cars, an idea the world has dismissed as a foolish dream for 100 years. Your first car is a production nightmare, costing far more to build than you can sell it for. Your other company builds rockets. You've poured your entire fortune into it. You've had 3 launches, and all 3 have exploded in spectacular fireballs, taking your hopes with them. You are out of money. You are so broke you're borrowing from friends to pay your bills. Your first marriage is falling apart in a very public, very painful divorce. The press is calling you a failure, a fool who squandered a fortune on science fiction fantasies. You wake up in the middle of the night screaming from nightmares. This isn't a movie. This was Elon Musk's reality. When asked about that time, he said something that cuts to the very heart of who he is. Standing on stage years later, he grinned sheepishly and told the world, "I reinvented electric cars and I'm sending people to Mars in a rocket ship. Did you think I was also going to be a chill, normal dude?" That one line is the key to understanding one of the most fascinating, controversial, and consequential figures of our time. And it's the central question that the brilliant biographer Walter Isaacson explores in his incredible book, Elon Musk. Isaacson, who has given us the definitive stories of figures like Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein, and Leonardo da Vinci, spent 2 years shadowing Musk, sitting in his meetings, talking to his family, his friends, and his enemies. The result is a book that is more than just a biography. It's a deep dive into the very nature of innovation, ambition, and the fire that drives a person to change the world. Today, we are going to unpack that story. By the end of our time together, you won't just know what Elon Musk has built. You will understand why. You will understand the brutal, painful forge that creates a person who can stare into the abyss of failure and not just survive, but build a ladder to the stars. And you'll understand the price that he, and everyone around him, has had to pay for that relentless drive. This is the story of a man who is, at once, a hero and a troublemaker, a visionary and a child, a titan of industry and a master of chaos. Book summary. To truly understand Elon Musk, you have to go back to a place of incredible beauty and incredible violence, South Africa in the 1970s and 80s. This was where he grew up, and it was a world that taught him one lesson above all others: life is pain, and you survive it by building armor around your heart. As a small, awkward boy who had trouble picking up social cues, he was the perfect target for bullies. He wasn't just teased, he was hunted. In one horrific incident, a gang of boys found him eating a sandwich, kicked him in the head, and threw him down a flight of concrete stairs. They beat him until his face was a swollen, unrecognizable ball of flesh. He was in the hospital for a week. You would expect a father to comfort his son after an ordeal like that. But Elon's father, Elon Musk, was a force of nature all his own, an engineer, a rogue, and a charismatic fantasist who inflicted wounds far deeper than any schoolyard bully could. When Elon came home from the hospital, Errol sided with the bullies. He made Elon stand for an hour while he screamed at him, calling him an idiot, worthless, a complete failure. Elon's younger brother, Kimball, said watching that tirade was the worst memory of his life. This wasn't a one-time event. It was a pattern. Errol had what the family called a Jekyll and Hyde nature. One moment he could be charming, and the next he would unleash hours of psychological torture on his sons, ending every tirade by telling Elon how pathetic he was. It was mental torture, Elon recalls, his voice choking up even decades later. He sure knew how to make anything terrible. This upbringing forged in him an incredibly high pain threshold. It also taught him to shut down his emotions to survive. His first wife, Justine, observed that if your own father is constantly calling you an idiot, you learn to turn off the parts of you that feel joy, empathy, or fear. This emotional shutdown would make him a risk-seeking innovator who wasn't afraid to gamble everything, but it would also make him, at times, a callous and difficult man to be around. It created what those close to him call his demon mode, a dark, cold state he retreats into when he feels attacked or under immense stress. His childhood was a cauldron of chaos, and it instilled in him a deep aversion to contentment. When things are calm, he becomes unnerved. He thrives on crisis, on storm and drama. As his brother Kimball says, he is a drama magnet. That's his compulsion, the theme of his life. His only escape was books. He would read for 10 hours a day, devouring his father's 2 sets of encyclopedias and every science fiction book he could find. It was in these books that he found his purpose. Isaac Asimov's Foundation series gave him the idea of preserving human consciousness across the galaxy. Robert Heinlein's stories sparked his imagination about artificial intelligence. But it was a quirky, hilarious book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that truly saved him. The book taught him a profound lesson. It tells the story of a supercomputer built to find the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. After millions of years, the computer spits out the answer: 42. The problem was, no one knew what the actual question was. For Elon, this meant the goal of humanity shouldn't be just to find answers, but to expand our consciousness so we can learn to ask better questions. This became his life's mission. He decided there were 3 areas that would most affect the future of humanity: the internet, sustainable energy, and space travel. As soon as he could, at age 17, he escaped. He left South Africa with just a backpack of books and a few $1,000s, determined to make his way to America, the land where he believed big things could happen. He started in Canada, working gritty jobs like cleaning out the boilers in a lumber mill, which involved crawling through a tiny tunnel in a hazmat suit while shoveling out steaming hot gunk. It was grueling, but he had survived far worse. Eventually, he made it to the University of Pennsylvania, where he studied physics and business. Physics to understand how the universe works, and business so he would never have to work for someone who didn't. In 1995, just as the internet was beginning to explode, he saw his chance. The web browser Netscape had just gone public, and the digital gold rush was on. He dropped out of his PhD program at Stanford after just 2 days to chase the internet wave. He and his brother Kimball started a company called Zip2, a kind of early online yellow pages with maps. It was the definition of a scrappy startup. They slept in their tiny office, showered at the YMCA, and ate at Jack in the Box every day. Elon coded relentlessly, often sleeping under his desk. He was a demanding manager from the start, rewriting his engineers' code in the middle of the night and getting into literal wrestling matches on the office floor with Kimball. 4 years later, they sold Zip2 to Compaq for over $300 million. At age 27, Elon walked away with $22 million. What do you do when you're a 27-year-old with that much money? You buy a $1 million McLaren F1, the fastest production car in the world. But Musk didn't just want to enjoy his wealth. He told a reporter at the time, "I could go and buy one of the islands of the Bahamas and turn it into my personal fiefdom, but I am much more interested in trying to build and create a new company." He was ready to push all his chips back onto the table. His next bet was on revolutionizing the financial industry. He started a company called X.com, with the grand vision of creating a one-stop shop for all financial needs: banking, investments, credit cards, all handled instantly online. His key insight was that money is just an entry in a database. At the same time, another company just down the street, co-founded by Peter Thiel and Max Levchin, had a similar idea for person-to-person payments called PayPal. The two companies were locked in a fierce battle, burning through cash to sign up customers. It was a race to see who would run out of money last. It became clear that only one could survive, so they decided to merge. The merger was almost derailed when Musk, showing off his new McLaren to Thiel, crashed it spectacularly, sending it flying through the air like a frisbee. Thiel, who wasn't wearing a seatbelt, was unhurt and realized, yeah, he was a bit crazy. The merged company kept the name PayPal, but Musk, as the largest shareholder and CEO, clashed with the other founders. He insisted on rebuilding the company's entire software system on Microsoft Windows instead of the open-source Unix platform the original PayPal engineers preferred. The tension grew until, while Musk was on his honeymoon, a honeymoon he had delayed to get the merger done, the board and his co-founders staged a coup. They fired him and replaced him as CEO. It was a brutal betrayal. But instead of fighting or holding a grudge, Musk did something unexpected. He supported the new leadership. He understood that the company was his baby, and like the mother in the biblical story, he was willing to give it up so it could survive. It was a move that earned him the lasting respect of the PayPal Mafia, a group of colleagues who would later invest in his craziest ideas when no one else would. A little over a year later, eBay bought PayPal for $1.5 billion. Musk, as the largest shareholder, walked away with over $180 million after taxes. Now, he had serious money. He was 31 years old. This was his chance to do something truly insane. He had always been haunted by the fact that human progress is not inevitable. Civilizations rise, and they fall. The ancient Egyptians built the pyramids, but that knowledge was lost. The Romans built aqueducts, but then came the Dark Ages. America had gone to the moon in 1969, but since then, our ambition in space had faded. He found this unacceptable. For humanity to have an exciting, inspiring future, he believed, we had to become a multiplanetary species. So he decided to go to Mars. His first idea was a PR stunt called Mars Oasis. Send a small, robotic greenhouse to Mars with seeds that would grow into plants on the red planet. The pictures of green life on a dead world would, he hoped, inspire humanity to get serious about space again. To do this, he needed a rocket. He flew to Russia 3 times to try and buy a refurbished intercontinental ballistic missile, but the Russians either didn't take him seriously or tried to charge him an astronomical price. On the flight home from Moscow, frustrated and angry, Musk had a revelation. He turned to his companions and said, "I think we can build this rocket ourselves." He had been poring over old rocket propulsion textbooks and had created what he called an idiot index, a calculation of how much more a finished product costs than its raw materials. Rockets, he realized, had an extremely high idiot index. He believed he could build them for a fraction of what the giant aerospace contractors like Boeing and Lockheed were charging the government. His friends staged an intervention. They made him watch a highlight reel of rockets exploding, trying to convince him he would lose all of his money. He was unmoved. "The likeliest outcome is that I will lose all my money," he told them. "But what's the alternative? That there be no progress in space exploration? We've got to give this a shot, or we're stuck on Earth forever." In 2002, he founded Space Exploration Technologies, or SpaceX. He invested $100 million of his own money and became its chief engineer, despite having no formal training in rocketry. He hired a brilliant, self-taught engine designer named Tom Muller, who had been building powerful amateur rocket engines in his garage. Together, they set out to do what only governments had done before. At the same time, another idea was consuming him. Back in college, he had written a paper on the importance of solar energy and had become obsessed with the potential of electric cars. In 2003, he met a pair of engineers, Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning, who had started a tiny company called Tesla Motors. They had a plan to build a high-performance electric sports car using thousands of small lithium-ion battery cells, the same kind used in laptops. Musk was captivated. This was the second pillar of his mission, accelerating the transition to sustainable energy. He invested $6.5 million and became the chairman of the board. Now he had two impossible missions running at once. The early years of both companies were a brutal struggle. SpaceX couldn't get permission to launch from U.S. military bases because of bureaucratic red tape, so Musk's team had to create a launch site on a tiny, remote island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean called Kwajalein Atoll. It was a logistical nightmare. Everything, from the rockets to the computers to the food, had to be flown or shipped thousands of miles. The salt air corroded their equipment, and they lived in fraying, dorm-like buildings. In March 2006, they were finally ready for the first launch of their rocket, the Falcon 1. Musk and his team watched as it lifted off the pad, and then, 25 seconds into the flight, the engine caught fire and the rocket came crashing down into the ocean. Failure number 1. A year later, in March 2007, they tried again. This time, the rocket flew for 5 minutes, reaching outer space. But a sloshing fuel problem caused the second stage to spin out of control, and it failed to reach orbit. Failure number 2. Back at Tesla, things were just as grim. Musk had become deeply involved in the design of their first car, the Roadster. He clashed constantly with the CEO, Martin Eberhard, insisting on changes to make the car lighter, safer, and more beautiful, from carbon fiber body panels to custom-designed seats and electric door handles. These changes made the car better, but they also caused massive delays and sent costs spiraling out of control. By 2007, it was clear the company was a burning dumpster fire of stupidity, as Musk later admitted. He fired Eberhard and took more direct control, but the problems were overwhelming. Then came August 2008. The third Falcon 1 launch. This time, everything had to work. Musk had told his team he only had money for 3 tries. If we couldn't do it in 3, he said, we deserved to die. The rocket lifted off beautifully. The first stage separated perfectly. And then, disaster. A tiny timing issue caused the first stage to bump into the second stage, sending it tumbling. The rocket, and its payload of satellites, fell back to Earth and exploded. Failure number 3. This was the moment we started with. The absolute rock bottom. SpaceX was a failure. Tesla was on the verge of bankruptcy. The global economy was in freefall. Musk was out of cash. In the SpaceX conference room the day after the third failure, Musk gathered his heartbroken team. They expected him to be furious, to unleash his demon mode. Instead, he was calm, somber, but resolute. He told them that there were parts for one more rocket back in the factory. Build it, he said, and launch it in 6 weeks. A jolt of optimism spread through the company. As one employee said, I think most of us would have followed him into the gates of hell carrying suntan oil after that. Just 6 weeks later, on September 28, 2008, the fourth Falcon 1 stood on the launch pad. This was it. Everything was on the line. As Musk watched from the control room, the rocket lifted off. The first stage burned perfectly. The second stage separated cleanly. 9 minutes later, the Kestrel engine on the second stage shut down as planned, and its payload was successfully released into orbit. They had done it. SpaceX became the first private company in history to reach orbit. The victory was monumental, but Musk had no time to celebrate. He still had to save Tesla, which was set to run out of money on Christmas Eve. He scraped together every last penny he could find, including loans from friends, and put it all into the company. at 6 p.m. On Christmas Eve 2008, just hours before the company would have gone bankrupt, the final investor committed, and the funding round closed. In the same week, SpaceX won a game-changing $1.6 billion contract from NASA to fly cargo missions to the International Space Station. In the span of a few months, Musk had gone from the brink of total ruin to saving both of his companies. The decade that followed was a whirlwind of breathtaking achievements and production hell. Tesla launched the Model S, a car so revolutionary that Motor Trend magazine named it Car of the Year, declaring it proof positive that America can still make great things. To build it, Musk bought a massive, abandoned auto factory in Fremont, California, for a fraction of its value and obsessively redesigned the manufacturing process. He believed that the factory itself, what he called the machine that builds the machine, was the most important product. He put engineers' desks right on the factory floor, so they could get instant feedback when their designs caused problems on the assembly line. When it came time to build the Model 3, Tesla's first mass-market car, Musk pushed for extreme automation. It was a disaster. The robots couldn't perform simple tasks that were easy for humans, and the factory ground to a halt. This was the infamous production hell of 2018. Musk moved into the factory, sleeping under his desk or on the roof, working around the clock, and driving his team relentlessly. He tore out the malfunctioning robots and, in a stroke of scrappy genius, built a new assembly line in a giant tent in the factory's parking lot. By the end of a brutal surge, they hit their target of producing 5,000 cars a week, and Tesla was saved once again. Meanwhile, SpaceX was making history. Musk's holy grail was reusability. Why, he asked, should we throw away rockets that cost tens of millions of dollars after just one use? An airplane isn't thrown away after one flight. In December 2015, after a series of explosive failures, a Falcon 9 booster, after launching its payload to space, flew back to Earth and landed itself upright on a landing pad at Cape Canaveral. The control room erupted. It was a moment that changed spaceflight forever. This relentless pace took a toll on his personal life. His marriage to Justine ended, and he entered a roller coaster relationship with the actress Tallulah Riley, whom he married, divorced, remarried, and divorced again. Then came a tumultuous and brutal relationship with the actress Amber Heard. In 2018, he met the iconoclastic and brilliant musician Grimes, who understood his geeky, sci-fi soul. She became the mother of 3 of his children, including a boy they named X-A12, or just X, who became his constant companion, riding on his shoulders through factories and sitting in his lap during late-night engineering meetings. He also secretly had twins with Shiv and Zillies, a top executive at his brain-computer interface company, Neuralink, a venture aimed at creating a symbiosis between human and artificial intelligence. By early 2022, Musk was at the pinnacle of his success. He was the richest person in the world. Tesla was worth more than the next 9 car companies combined. SpaceX was launching more mass into orbit than all other countries and companies combined. But for Musk, periods of calm are unnerving. He needs a battle. He needs a storm. And so, he found one: Twitter. He had always been a prolific and impulsive user of the platform, seeing it as the world's public square. But he had grown increasingly frustrated with its content moderation policies, believing it was too quick to censor speech and was infected with a woke mind virus that was divisive and hateful. In April 2022, after secretly buying up 9% of the company's stock, he shocked the world by announcing a hostile bid to buy Twitter outright for $44 billion. His plan was to take it private and transform it into what he called X, the Everything app, a platform for free speech, a creator payment system, and a financial network, fulfilling his original vision for X.com from 2 decades earlier. Then, he tried to back out. He claimed Twitter had lied about the number of fake or bot accounts on the platform. Twitter sued him to force the sale, setting up a high-stakes legal battle in Delaware. In the end, his lawyers convinced him he would lose. He was trapped. He had to buy it. On October 26, 2022, he walked into Twitter's San Francisco headquarters carrying a porcelain sink and tweeted a video with the caption, "Let that sink in." The clash of cultures was immediate and explosive. Twitter was a place that prided itself on being high empathy, nurturing, and caring about psychological safety. Musk recoiled at that phrase. He believed in being hardcore. In his first 3 weeks, he unleashed a corporate blitzkrieg unlike any other in history. He fired the CEO and other top executives for cause moments after the deal closed, denying them their severance packages. He brought in a small army of engineers from Tesla, including his cousins James and Andrew Musk, to conduct rapid code reviews and decide who should stay and who should go. He then gave the remaining employees an ultimatum: commit to being extremely hardcore and working long, intense hours, or leave with 3 months severance. When the dust settled, he had cut nearly 80% of the workforce, from almost 8,000 people down to about 2,000. The chaos was relentless. He rolled out a new subscription service, Twitter Blue, which led to a flood of impersonators and scared away major advertisers. He reinstated controversial accounts, including Donald Trump's, based on the results of a public poll. He temporarily suspended the accounts of journalists he accused of doxing him by tracking his private jet. He seemed to be running one of the world's most influential communication platforms based on impulse, anger, and late-night whims. He was, as his brother warned him, acting like a fucking idiot. He was, once again, in a state of war, fighting on all fronts. But this is the state where he feels most alive. It's his default setting. Commentary. So, after all that, what do we make of this man? Walter Isaacson's biography doesn't give us a simple answer, and that's its greatest strength. It presents Elon Musk in all his complexity, without trying to smooth over the rough edges or explain away the contradictions. We see the brilliant visionary who can grasp the fundamental principles of physics and engineering, and we see the impulsive man-child who picks fights on Twitter like a schoolboy on the playground. We see the leader who can inspire people to achieve the impossible, and we see the boss who is devoid of empathy and can be brutally harsh to those around him. The central question the book leaves us with is one that Isaacson himself poses: could a less abrasive, less drama-addicted person have accomplished what he did? Could a chill, normal dude have launched us toward Mars and an electric vehicle future? The book suggests, quite compellingly, that the answer is probably no. The same demons that haunt him are also what drive him. His aversion to contentment, born from a traumatic childhood, means he can never rest. Once a goal is achieved, he must immediately find a new, more difficult one. His siege mentality, the feeling that he is always in a fight for survival, is what allows him to push through periods of production hell that would break any normal executive. The dark side and the light side are not separate, they are woven together. As Shakespeare taught us, even the best people are molded out of faults. One of the most powerful takeaways for me is the relentless application of what Musk calls the algorithm. It's a 5-step process for engineering and manufacturing that he repeats like a mantra. 1. Question every requirement. Every rule, every specification comes from a person. Find that person and question them. Smart people are the most dangerous because you're less likely to question them. 2. Delete any part or process you can. If you don't have to add things back in later, you didn't delete enough. 3. Simplify and optimize. This should come after deleting, not before. The most common mistake is to simplify a part that shouldn't exist in the first place. 4. Accelerate cycle time. Speed up the process, but only after you've worked on the first 3 steps. 5. Automate. And don't do it too early. This algorithm isn't just about building rockets or cars. It's a way of thinking. It's about fighting inertia, challenging assumptions, and relentlessly stripping things down to their essential truths. It's about having a maniacal sense of urgency. This is something anyone can apply, whether you're building a company, working on a school project, or just trying to improve your own life. In the end, the story of Elon Musk is a story of will. It's about the sheer, indomitable force of human will, focused with an intensity that borders on madness, to bend reality to your vision. He is a man who decided that the future he read about in science fiction books as a boy was not going to build itself. If humanity was going to have an inspiring future among the stars, and a sustainable one here on Earth, he was going to have to be the one to make it happen. And he was willing to risk everything: his fortune, his reputation, his relationships, and his sanity, to do it. That was the book summary of Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson. We've explored the major arcs of his life today, but a summary can only ever be a map. The real treasure is in the journey of reading the book yourself. It's in the quiet moments when Isaacson's masterful storytelling reveals a subtle detail, a private text message, or a vulnerable conversation that suddenly makes this larger-than-life figure feel profoundly, and sometimes painfully, human. This summary is a doorway. If anything we've talked about has sparked your curiosity or challenged your perspective, I encourage you to walk through it. Grab a copy of the book, because it's more than just a history. It's a deep look into what it takes, and what it costs, to change the world. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to click that like button and subscribe to our channel. It tells us we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Thank you for joining me, and let's keep learning and growing together.